I paid for my mother's entire birthday party, and my brother used it to humiliate me in front of everyone. He stood there, glass in hand, smiling like he had just delivered the perfect punchline. Some people in this family, he said, glancing straight at me, are really good at pretending they're successful. Laughter. 14 people at the table. Not one of them questioned it. Not one of them looked at me and thought, wait, something's off. Because to them, I was exactly what he described. The quiet failure. The one who moved away and never really made it. The one who showed up once a year, dressed just well enough to look okay, but not enough to look successful. That's what he believed. That's what they all believed. And I let them. For 5 years. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, hit subscribe. Because this one doesn't end the way they thought it would. The party was perfect. Of course it was. I made sure of it. Private dining room at one of the best restaurants in the city. Not flashy, no. That would have raised questions. Elegant. Controlled. Just expensive enough that people felt it, without knowing why. My mother sat at the center, glowing. 60 years old. She thought my brother had planned everything. He made sure she believed that. Don't worry, he told her weeks ago, right in front of me. I've got it covered. I said nothing. I just nodded and smiled. Because correcting him too early would have ruined everything. The guest list? Carefully curated. Family, obviously. But also a few extras. People my brother didn't recognize. People he didn't question. A couple from my mother's church. An old family friend. And one man sitting quietly at the far end of the table, who hadn't said a word all evening. Dinner moved smoothly. Drinks, appetizers, laughter. My brother was in his element, telling stories, controlling the room, interrupting when he felt like it, correcting details no one asked him to correct. He loved being the center. Always had. Remember when she tried to start that little online business? He said at one point, chuckling. Aunt Linda leaned in. Oh yeah, what was that again? I didn't answer. I let him. It didn't really go anywhere, he said with a shrug. I think she just got bored. More laughter. I picked up my glass and took a sip. Timing matters. And this wasn't the moment. By the time the main course arrived, everyone was relaxed, comfortable, exactly where I needed them. That's when my brother stood up, tapped his glass. The room quieted instantly. All right, he said, grinning. Let's say a few words for Mom. Applause. He loved applause. His speech started well. Of course it did. Stories about childhood, about how hard our mother worked, about how she held everything together. All true. That's what made it effective. Because when someone tells enough truth, people stop questioning the parts that aren't. And you know, he continued, pacing slightly, family's a funny thing. Here it comes. I leaned back in my chair. Watched him. Watched the confidence. The certainty. He really thought he owned this moment. Some of us, he said, lifting his glass slightly, took what Mom built and actually turned it into something. He gestured to himself. Light laughter. Of course. And some of us. Pause. A glance in my direction. Well, they're still figuring things out. More laughter. Louder this time. More comfortable. Because now it was clear. Now it was safe to laugh. I smiled. Not big. Not fake. Just enough. Because this was the moment I'd been waiting for. He raised his glass higher. To Mom, he said, voice stronger now. For raising at least one kid who knew what to do with the opportunities she gave us. That landed. You could feel it. Even my mother shifted slightly in her seat. But she didn't stop him. She never did. Everyone raised their glasses. To Mom. They drank. They smiled. They moved on. Just like that. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just been reduced to a punchline in a room I paid for. And that's when I stood up. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just deliberate. The kind of movement that makes people look without knowing why. Actually, I said, my voice calm, steady, before we move on. A few heads turned. My brother sat down slowly, a faint smirk still on his face. He thought I was going to defend myself. Explain something. Make it awkward. That's what he expected. That's what he wanted. I reached into my bag, pulled out a small envelope. Nothing fancy.
Plain.
Intentional. I just wanted to add something. I continued, glancing at my mother. She looked confused. A little nervous.
Good.
That meant she hadn't figured it out yet. I know tonight is about you, I said, and everything you've done for this family.
A pause.
Let it breathe. But I think it's also important to be honest about what this family actually looks like now. My brother shifted slightly. There it was. The first crack. I walked around the table.
Slowly.
Every step controlled. Until I reached the far end.
The quiet man.
The one no one had questioned. I placed the envelope in front of him. Would you mind? I said. He nodded once. Opened it. The room had gone silent.
Completely.
No forks. No glasses. No whispers. Just eyes. Watching. Trying to understand. My brother laughed lightly. Okay, what is this? He said, leaning back. Some kind of performance? I didn't look at him. Not yet. The man at the end of the table pulled out a single sheet of paper, adjusted it, and then spoke. My name is Daniel Reeves, he said calmly. No reaction. Not yet. That's Dnilreves. A few confused looks. He looked directly at my brother. And then, at the request of the account holder, I'm here tonight to formally confirm authorization changes regarding all active financial structures tied to the family trust. Silence.
Heavy.
Immediate. My brother frowned. Wait, what? I finally turned to him, met his eyes, and for the first time that night, I stopped smiling. You really should have checked who paid for this party, I said quietly. No one moved. Not my mother. Not Aunt Linda. Not even my brother. They all just stared at Daniel like he'd started speaking another language. Family trust, my brother said, laughing once, but there was no confidence in it now. What family trust? Daniel folded his hands on the table.
Calm.
Professional. Unbothered. The Whitmore Family Preservation Trust, he said. Established 6 years ago. My mother looked at me so fast her chair creaked against the floor. 6 years, she said. What are you talking about? I kept my eyes on my brother, because he was the one unraveling.
You're joking, he said.
Mom, tell me you know what this is. She didn't answer, because she didn't know. That was the point. I hadn't built it for her. I'd built it because of him. You have to understand something about my brother. He never stole in obvious ways. He didn't smash windows. He didn't grab cash from wallets. He stole through assumption, through pressure, through noise, through being the loudest person in the room until everyone got tired and let him have what he wanted.
That was his talent.
By 28, he had already taken over most of our mother's finances. Not legally.
Just practically.
Bills went through him. Repairs went through him. Insurance paperwork, property taxes, investment ideas, vendor calls. Everything somehow passed through him first. And if anyone questioned it, he'd act offended. Like helping our mother was some noble burden the rest of us had abandoned him with. Meanwhile, small amounts kept vanishing. Nothing dramatic. A few thousand here. A late fee there. A temporary transfer that didn't come back for months. Enough to hurt. Never enough to trigger panic. Unless you were paying attention. I was paying attention. 5 years ago, I came home for Thanksgiving and found my mother crying in the pantry. Not dramatic crying. Quiet crying. The kind people do when they've practiced staying silent for too long. I asked her what happened. She smiled first. That broken little smile people use when they don't want to look weak. Then she said, "Your brother says I'm overreacting." That sentence told me everything. Not the details. The pattern. So that night, after everyone went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with her checkbook, bank statements, overdue notices, and a yellow legal pad. 3 hours later, I had a timeline. 12 days later, I had a lawyer. 3 months later, I had control. Quietly. Legally. Irrevocably. I don't understand, my mother said now, looking between me and Daniel. What trust? The one that currently holds the residential property, the business distributions, the municipal bonds, and the reserve accounts, Daniel said. Aunt Linda blinked. What business distributions? There it was. The moment the room realized this wasn't one surprise. It was many, layered, carefully stacked. And every answer was going to make the last one worse. My brother leaned forward.
No. No, stop.
What business? I turned to my mother. 3 years ago, when Uncle Robert's manufacturing company sold its regional contracts, he left you a percentage of the payout. My mother stared at me. He told me that deal fell through. I looked at my brother. He looked back at me. And for the first time all evening, he didn't have anything clever to say. Just that blank, ugly look people get when their lies stop working fast enough. My mother turned to him slowly. You told me there was nothing left.
It was complicated, he snapped.
You wouldn't have understood the tax side. Daniel didn't even glance up before speaking. The after-tax proceeds were substantial. Aunt Linda whispered, "Oh my God." My brother pushed back from the table. Who is this guy? He barked. Seriously, who did you bring in here? Daniel met his stare. I'm the trust administrator. No, you're some actor she hired to embarrass me. I finally laughed. Not loudly. Just enough.
Because that was still his instinct.
Not denial of the facts. Denial of my capability. You still think I need theatrics to beat you, I said.
His face changed.
That hit.
Good.
If this is about money, he said, lowering his voice, trying to regain control, we can talk about it privately. There it was. The pivot. The one abusers always make when the audience turns. Public humiliation for you. Private conversation for them.
No.
Not this time. You used a public moment, I said, so you get a public answer. My mother looked sick. Not because she knew everything yet. Because she knew enough. That is always the worst part. Not learning you were betrayed. Learning how long it must have been happening right in front of you. Daniel slid the paper across the table. My brother grabbed it. Read the first lines. Then read them again. His face drained so quickly, it was almost impressive. What is this? He asked, but his voice had lost all force. That, I said, is confirmation that as of this morning, all advisory access under your name has been permanently revoked. Advisory access? Aunt Linda repeated. Meaning, Daniel said, Mr. Whitmore can no longer initiate transfers, request account changes, access statements, communicate as an authorized intermediary, or represent any trust-held asset in any financial capacity. The room stayed silent. Then my cousin Michelle, who had barely said 3 words all night, muttered, So, he got fired from his own scam? I almost smiled. Almost. My brother threw the paper down. This is insane, he said. You can't do this. I already did. You had no right. That one nearly made me laugh for real. No right, I said. I had power of attorney after Mom's surgery. Remember? The paperwork you rushed her through without reading because you assumed it named you.
He stared at me.
Then at Mom. Then back at me. You forged something.
No, I said.
I learned how to read. A couple people at the table looked down, suddenly very interested in their plates. Because now they were remembering. Mom's surgery. The paperwork. My brother in the waiting room, loudly acting like the responsible son. Me sitting in the corner with a pen, asking questions no one else thought to ask. He hadn't read a single page. He just assumed the world worked the way it always had, that the room would tilt in his direction, that people like me existed to absorb damage, not create consequences. My mother's voice came out barely above a whisper. How much? No one answered immediately, because everyone knew what she meant. Not what's in the trust. What did he take? Daniel glanced at me. I nodded once. He opened a folder. Of course there was a folder. There are documented transfers, he said, consulting fees, reimbursement requests, vehicle payments, personal travel expenses, and discretionary cash movements over a 47-month period. My mother closed her eyes. How much? She asked again. Daniel named the number. No one breathed. Aunt Linda actually put a hand over her mouth. Michelle said, Jesus Christ. And my brother, my brilliant, untouchable, golden son brother, did what cowards always do when the evidence becomes real. He got angry at the victim. You told her, he shouted at me. You dug through private records and turned everybody against me? I didn't turn them, I said. I just stopped protecting you. That line landed harder than anything else. Because it was true. I had protected him. For years. Not by helping him. By staying quiet enough that nobody had to choose sides. Silence is protection. Families know that better than anyone. They call it keeping the peace. They call it moving on. They call it not making things worse. But what it really means is this. One person creates the damage. Another person gets blamed for mentioning it. And everybody else gets to feel innocent. Not tonight. My brother looked around the table, desperate now. Mom, he said, softening his voice, trying a new angle. You know I've done everything for you.
She left.
I stayed. My mother looked at him, and I saw the exact moment his favorite weapon failed. Because guilt only works when the target still trusts your love. And hers had finally cracked. You stayed near me, she said quietly. That's not the same as helping me. The room went dead silent again. He blinked, like she'd slapped him. Honestly, it was better. He turned to me one last time. You planned this? Yes. For how long? I picked up my glass,
Took a slow sip.
and set it back down. Long enough to know you'd make a speech. He looked like he wanted to lunge across the table. But Daniel wasn't the only reason he didn't. There were witnesses now. And cowards hate witnesses. My brother grabbed his jacket off the chair. This isn't over, he said. I believed him. That was the problem. Men like him don't collapse cleanly. They thrash. They blame. They scramble. And if they think they still have one move left, they'll use it.
He pointed at me.
You think you won because of some paperwork?
Fine.
Enjoy the party. Then he looked at my mother and smiled. That smile. The one that meant he still knew something we didn't. Then he walked out. The door shut behind him. Nobody spoke for 3 full seconds. Then my mother turned to me slowly. What didn't he tell me yet? That question changed everything. Because until then, this was still about money. But I knew that tone. I knew that look. She had finally understood the part I'd been most afraid of. My brother never had just one plan. And the truth was, the trust wasn't the bomb. It was the warning shot. I looked at Daniel. He reached into his briefcase again. And this time he pulled out the other file. The one I had hoped I wouldn't need tonight. I placed my hand on it before he could slide it across the table. Then I looked at my mother and said the words that split the night in half. He tried to put the house in collateral last month. The room didn't react right away. Not because they didn't understand. Because they did. And it took a second for it to land. My mother blinked slowly. What? She asked. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just empty. I kept my hand on the file. Because once I let go, there was no going back to pretending this was just about money. He applied for a secured line of credit, I said. Using the house. Aunt Linda leaned forward. He can't do that. It's not just his. Daniel answered before I could. He attempted to, he said. The request was flagged during internal verification. My cousin Michelle frowned. Flagged by who? Daniel nodded toward me. I monitor everything tied to the trust, I said. Every request, every inquiry, every change attempt. My mother's eyes moved from me to the file and back. You're telling me, she said slowly, he tried to borrow money against my house? Yes. Her hand tightened around the edge of the table. For what? That was the part one had hoped we wouldn't have to say out loud. Not here. Not like this. But we were already past dignity. Past privacy. Past pretending. I opened the file. Turned it toward her. Inside were copies. Applications. Email chains. Signatures. And one line, highlighted. Purpose of funds. Bridge financing for expansion. What expansion? Aunt Linda asked. No one answered.
Because now everyone was looking at me.
And I realized something in that moment. This wasn't just exposure anymore. It was responsibility. They needed the whole truth. Not pieces. Not hints. All of it. There is no expansion, I said. My mother looked up. What do you mean? I exhaled slowly. Then said it clean. He's in debt. Silence.
Heavy.
Immediate. My cousin Michelle shook her head. No, that's not. He just bought a new car. Leased, I said. Aunt Linda added. And that condo. Not his, I said. Short-term hold, through a shell LLC. It's already underwater. Daniel didn't interrupt. Didn't add. He didn't need to. Because the room was finally starting to see what I'd seen years ago. The illusion. My mother looked like she was trying to hold on to something that wasn't there anymore. But he said everything was stable, she whispered. He needed you to believe that, I said. Why? So, you wouldn't ask questions. That hit. Because it wasn't complicated. It never is. She looked down at the papers again. At the signatures. At his name. Then she flipped to the last page.
And stopped.
What is this? She asked. I knew exactly what she was looking at. Because that was the part that changed this from bad to unforgivable. That, I said carefully, is where he tried to authorize the collateral structure. Aunt Linda leaned closer. In English. Daniel answered this time. It's a clause that would have allowed the lender to place a claim on the property in the event of default. Michelle's eyes widened. Default. Yes, Daniel said. Meaning if payments were missed, the lender could pursue recovery through asset seizure. My mother's voice barely came out. You mean they could have taken the house? No one softened it. No one rephrased it. Because at this point, softening the truth would have been another kind of lie. Yes, I said. She leaned back in her chair. Slowly. Like her body had just decided it couldn't hold her upright anymore. I don't understand, she said. How could he even try that? I never signed anything. I held her gaze. He didn't need you to. That got everyone's attention. What does that mean? Aunt Linda asked. Daniel adjusted the paper slightly. The initial submission listed him as primary contact, he said, with supporting documentation indicating advisory authority. My mother looked confused. Advisory authority doesn't mean ownership, she said. No, Daniel replied, but it can be used to initiate preliminary negotiations. And then, Michelle asked. Daniel paused, then said it. And then, additional documents are requested. That silence again. That awful, creeping understanding. He was going to get me to sign something, my mother said. Not a question. A realization. I nodded. Yes. Her lips parted slightly. And I could see it happening. The replay. All the moments she had brushed off. All the papers she had signed without reading because your brother already looked at it. All the times she had trusted convenience over caution. All the times she had trusted him. He told me last month I needed to update some insurance forms, she said slowly. I felt something tighten in my chest. Did you sign anything? She shook her head. No, I told him I'd look at it later.
Good.
That one word echoed in my head like relief.
Good.
Because if she had signed, this night would have ended very differently. Aunt Linda leaned back, shaking her head. This is insane. This is actually insane. Michelle added. He would have lost the house. For what? To cover his own mess? Yes, I said. No hesitation. No cushion. My mother finally looked up at me again. But this time, there was something different in her expression. Not confusion. Not denial. Clarity. Sharp. Painful. Final. How long did you know? She asked. That question mattered. Not because of the answer. Because of what it meant. She wasn't asking about him anymore.
She was asking about me.
About trust. About whether I had been protecting her. Or controlling her. About the debt? I said.
A year.
And the house. A month. Why didn't you tell me? There it was. The only question that could actually hurt. Because I needed proof. I said. Not suspicion. Her eyes didn't leave mine. And tonight? Tonight, I said. He gave me everything I needed. She held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. Slow. Accepting. I believed him, she said quietly. No one rushed to comfort her. No one said, it's not your fault. Because sometimes, people don't need comfort. They need truth to settle. I know, I said. Across the table, Daniel closed the folder. But he didn't put it away. Not yet. There is one more matter, he said. I looked at him. I knew what he was about to say. And I didn't like it. Given the attempted collateral action, he continued, and the pattern of unauthorized financial behavior, the trust has already initiated a protective review. Michelle frowned. What does that mean? It means, Daniel said, that depending on the outcome, further legal steps may be taken. Aunt Linda stiffened. Legal steps against him? Yes. My mother closed her eyes again, just for a second, then opened them. No, she said. That surprised everyone, including me. No. I repeated. She shook her head slowly. I'm not protecting what he did, she said. But I'm not sending my son into court either. Aunt Linda started to say something, but my mother raised her hand slightly. Not aggressively. Just enough. I want to talk to him, she said. There it was. The one thing I couldn't control. The one variable I had always known might break this plan. Mom, I said carefully. He's not going to tell you the truth. She looked at me, and for the first time that night, there was steel in her voice. He's going to tell me something, she said. And I'm going to listen. I studied her face, tried to see if this was denial, weakness, habit. It wasn't. It was something else. Something harder, more dangerous. Decision. And that's when I realized something I hadn't planned for. Not everything was going to happen on my terms anymore. Because if my brother still had one move left, this was it. My mother stood up. I'm calling him, she said. I glanced at Daniel. He didn't react, didn't interfere. Because legally, this part wasn't his. This was family. And family doesn't follow contracts. She stepped away from the table, phone already in her hand.
Dialing.
The room stayed silent. Listening. Waiting. She put the phone to her ear. It rang once.
Twice.
Then, he picked up. I know you're still nearby, she said. No greeting. No softness.
A pause.
We couldn't hear his voice. But we didn't need to. Come back, she said. Another pause. Longer this time. Her grip on the phone tightened slightly.
Now.
She lowered the phone slowly. Looked at me. He's coming back. And in that moment, I knew something with absolute certainty. The night wasn't over. Not even close. Because everything I had done so far, every document, every move, every reveal, had been controlled, measured, calculated. But what was about to happen next? That wasn't strategy anymore. That was collision. No one touched their food. No one checked their phone. The entire room sat in that quiet, stretched tension where every second feels louder than it should. Waiting. My mother didn't sit back down. She stayed standing at the end of the table, hands resting lightly on the chair in front of her, like she needed something solid to hold on to. 5 minutes passed. Then 7. Then, the door opened. My brother walked back in. No smile this time. No performance. No charm. Just that tight, controlled expression people wear when they're trying to hold a situation together with nothing but willpower. His eyes moved across the room, stopped on me for half a second, then shifted to my mother. You wanted to talk, he said. No one invited him to sit.
He didn't ask.
He stayed standing.
Good.
My mother didn't waste time. Is it true? She asked. Straight.
Clean.
No emotion in the words. He let out a slow breath, ran a hand over the back of his neck.
Classic.
Buying time. Depend what you think is true, he said. I almost laughed. Still playing. Even now. The house, she said. The loan.
A pause.
just long enough to decide which version of the truth he was going to try. I was handling something, he said finally. A short-term issue. There is no short-term issue that puts my home at risk, she said.
His jaw tightened.
You wouldn't have lost anything. That was the moment. The exact moment everything ended. Because that sentence? That wasn't denial. That was justification. My mother straightened slightly, and I saw it. The last piece of doubt leaving her. You were willing to gamble it, she said. He didn't answer. Because there was no version of this where he looked good anymore. I was fixing something, he snapped. You don't understand how these things work. There it was again. Control, through confusion. Make it sound complex. Make it sound necessary. Make it sound like the other person is too small to question it. But it didn't land this time. I understand enough, she said. You used me. Silence. He looked at her like he was seeing a different person. Maybe he was. I took care of you, he said, softer now. For years. She didn't flinch. You took access, she replied. That hit harder than anything I could have said. He looked around the room then, searching for support, for allies, for anyone willing to soften the fall. No one moved,
Because now they all saw it.
not the loud version of him, not the confident version, the real one, cornered. You're all just going to sit here, he said. Let her do this? No one answered. Because this wasn't something I did. It was something he created. And I just stopped hiding it. He turned back to me. And there it was. The last play. This isn't over, he said quietly. I nodded once. I know. That threw him off. Just for a second. Because he expected fear. Pushback. Emotion. Not agreement. You think this ruins me? He said. No, I replied. That confused him even more. This doesn't ruin you, I said. It just exposes you. Silence. And then, for the first time all night,
He laughed.
not confident, not amused, just hollow. You planned all this, he said. For what? To prove a point. I shook my head.
No, I said.
To stop the damage. That landed. Because it wasn't about revenge.
And he knew it.
Revenge he could fight. Revenge he could twist. Revenge he could turn into a story where he was the victim. But consequences? Consequences just sit there.
Heavy.
Unmovable. My mother spoke again. You're done handling anything for me, she said. Final. No accounts. No paperwork. No calls. Nothing. He opened his mouth.
Closed it.
Because there was nothing left to negotiate. And if I find out you try anything like this again, she continued, I won't hesitate. That part hung in the air. Unfinished. But understood. Legal.
Permanent.
Real. He looked at her for a long moment. Then nodded once. Not in agreement. In acknowledgement. Then he turned. Walked to the door.
Stopped.
Didn't look back. And left. This time, no one followed. The door closed. And something in the room shifted. Not relief. Not yet. But clarity. The kind that comes after a storm, when everything is still standing. But nothing feels the same. My mother sat down slowly. Looked at her hands. Then at me. You paid for this? She asked quietly. I nodded. Why? That question mattered more than everything else tonight. More than the money. More than the documents. More than him. Because I knew he'd make it about himself, I said. A small breath left her. Almost a laugh. Almost. And I needed him to do it in a room where he couldn't control the ending. She held my gaze. For a long time. Then she reached across the table. And took my hand.
No speech.
No apology. Just that. And honestly, that was enough. Daniel stood quietly, gathering his papers. Professional to the end. Invisible again, now that the moment had passed. Everything is secured, he said to me. I'll follow up tomorrow. I nodded. Thank you. He gave a small nod to my mother. Then left. The rest of the table stayed quiet.
Processing.
Rebuilding their understanding of the last 5 years in real time. Michelle finally broke the silence. Okay, she said softly. That was insane. Aunt Linda exhaled slowly. I don't even know what to say. I leaned back in my chair. Finally, for the first time all night, I wasn't calculating the next move. Because there wasn't one.
It was done.
And that's the thing people don't tell you about moments like this. They don't feel like victory. They feel like silence, like space, like something heavy has finally been put down, and you're not sure what to do with your hands anymore. I looked around the table, at the people who had laughed earlier, at the ones who stayed quiet, at the ones who didn't see it, and I didn't feel anger. Not anymore, because the truth had already done what it needed to do. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever stayed quiet while someone else rewrote your story,
Hit like.
because sometimes the strongest move isn't fighting back. It's choosing the moment when the truth becomes unavoidable. And if you've ever watched someone lose control the second they couldn't control the room,
Comment timing?
I read every single one. Subscribe if you want more stories like this. Real power isn't loud. It's patient. And when it finally shows up, it doesn't ask for attention. It just takes control.